All right. Well, with regards to this current outbreak and everything that we're seeing right now, what do you foresee for the future? Is this something that we are wrapping up? Like, can we expect this to be a everybody stays home for 2 weeks and then it drags on for years and years kind of situation? Or how do you imagine it, Ben?
I mean, this has already been with us since 2003, so this is just, a different experience of the same thing that has already happened. So, I mean, with any of these diseases, it's not like something's going to surface and then just go away. I mean, it might seem to go away according to the public, but we're still going to see it in hospitals. Like, people seem to forget that there are hundreds and thousands of diseases that we see in the hospitals on a regular basis. So while it might not be on your minds, things like histoplasmosis are still things that I think about. And so they might not be like super prevalent among the general public, but the diseases aren't going away. They're just now part of uh, regular medicine. It's just things that we now think of as differentials, things that we're going to address and try to keep preventing. Hopefully we can eradicate some of these, but especially in today's age with the anti-vax movement being very strong, and I think also with the recent sentiments about COVID, I think people are less likely to want to take precautions. I think we kind of have two sides here, though. We have the one side that's like, I never want what happened with COVID to happen again. And those people might be more proactive. But on the flip side, we have these other people that just don't want COVID to happen again. So they'll just pretend like nothing is wrong. And so I think we have the one side that is going to do a better job, and then the other side that is going to do a worse job. And hopefully we'll do better. But
We'll all just
I'm
meet in the middle
expecting this
because that's
to,
how it works,
yeah.
right? Like if half of the group working on the assignment tries really, really hard, and then the other half just phones it in, you'll get a B, right?
I mean,
Hopefully.
we're
Well,
seeing things come back like measles that we thought we had eradicated, but uh, we didn't because people aren't vaccinated anymore. So, I mean, I'd like to say that we're gonna get over this, but I highly doubt that it's going anywhere anytime soon.
Okay, so
I mean, if
this is
it's a
likely something we're just going to continue to live with. Nate, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, if you do poorly or adequately at a school project, you get a B. If you don't take precautions for infectious disease, you might die. So I feel like the folks that are gonna take precautions and wear masks, we're kind of feel like our outlook is looking a little bit better.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, there is a lot of misinformation just sort of in the ethos right now, and particularly when it comes to a widespread disease. Are there any particular myths that you can sort of debunk or highlight for us now?
I mean, we talked about monkeypox with it being specifically a gay disease. It is not.
Mm-hmm.
It is
Or
not a
specifically
yeah.
sexually transmitted or exclusively anyway.
Yeah, it's not. We address that. It's transmissible by touch, so everyone is vulnerable. Everyone should take this just as seriously. Vaccines are safe. They're not going to give you the flu, or they're not going to give you COVID. So get vaccinated. A lot of the myths are the things that we've been saying and we keep saying over again, but we keep having to say it because people aren't listening.
Mm.
And I mean, are there any myths in particular that you both have heard that have been kind of on your minds?
Oh God, I was hoping this wouldn't come up, but since you asked, so I took a vacation there a couple of weeks ago and found out 2 days into my vacation that my daughter had COVID, and everybody in my household got it except for my 14-year-old son, who's never been vaccinated because his mother's one of them, and so he was the only one not to get the COVID. My partner and I are both double vaxxed, and my daughter is as well. And then so when I go back to work, and my colleague who I've tried to get into call into Truth Wanted because he's one of them guys, and he's like, I told him that the only person who wasn't vaccinated was the one who didn't get the COVID. And he's like, see, it's the vaccine that does it to you. See? And I'm like,
Mhm.
no, dude, that's just a coincidence. He just got lucky. And also, he's 14. Like every single system in his body is going into overdrive, right? Like he's just
Sure.
naturally got a strong immune system. But is there a better answer that I could have given to that, Ben?
It's difficult with people like that, but yeah, I mean, we're looking at a coincidence and some variables that we just don't know about. Is we don't know why this specific individual didn't get the infection. It could be the immune system. It could be was just in the right place at the right time when the rest of you were exposed. They might not have been for some reason if the virus didn't bind as well. If there's some different receptor activity, we don't know. There's plenty of variables, and I think this is a danger that we get, especially with people who think that they understand medicine just by googling a few things. Like it's not cut and dry. There's a reason why there's so much schooling required to understand this on a deeper level, and that's there are so many variables at play, and you never know. And we can kind of predict certain variables that have more impact than others, but you can't just go from assertion A to then conclusion C and then ignore the things in the
Right.
middle. The middle is important. The steps to get there were important. What other factors played a role in this outcome? And I think people don't I don't know if they just aren't taught that step in the middle, or if I know it's easier to just ignore it. It's easier to start with an assertion and go to a conclusion,
Yeah, the middle is
because
everything.
Yeah.
middle's everything.
It's literally everything.
Step 1,
But
question mark,
yeah,
question mark, question mark. Step 3, lots of money. Like, yeah, the
well,
middle part
absolutely.
is where the heavy lifting is done.
Yeah,
And you're less
absolutely.
confident once you explore that middle. Like there's a reason why we do differential diagnosis the way that we do. You're not gonna see a physician and have them say, I mean, I'm sure there are bad ones out there, but if you have a physician that's practicing the way that they were taught, you have the person that comes in with a set of symptoms, and then you have to work to get to what you're gonna do about it. But in order to get to what you're gonna do about it, you have to think about the middle. Like what got them to that place? And even talking about monkeypox, we had a list of differentials here. So if you have these, let's say you just wake up one morning and you have these blisters all over your body, like could it be monkeypox? Sure. We also talked about it could be chickenpox, it could be eczema, could be herpes, could be syphilis, could be measles, could be a drug related rash. So you can't, and the more options you add to this differential list, the less confident I am that my immediate intuitive answer was correct. So going through that process is important. And I think this is a little bit of a tangent, but going into other areas of skepticism, like this is the mindset we all need to have of like taking vaccines. Like I did the vaccine, I got this result, but what happened in the middle? And I think I think it's hard to talk to people about how to get there, which is why I think in your case and in other cases, I like to sit back and ask them questions and see if they can get to the middle themselves. Because I think even if you could point out other alternatives in the middle, they might be less confident that their intuition was correct.
Oh,
Sure. So, like,
Ben,
relying
I tried.
on like Socratic, the Socratic method, or whether we want to call it street epistemology or
Yeah.
motivational interviewing, or any of these strategies for sort of allowing people to generate the answers themselves.
Yeah, and like
Yeah,
Nate was saying, like he tried, but and again, like my method, because I mean, it's all again kind of the same kind of thing. Like the specific way that I approach is like as if I'm someone's doctor. It's as if I'm asking questions about their history and their presentation, but they have to cooperate. Like if someone's coming to you, or if someone's coming to Christy, and they're seeking a professional to intervene in whatever situation is going on. Like they have to want to go with it. They have to want to follow the process. And if someone's not contributing to the process, that's not going to be as productive of a conversation. And so that's where
Sure.
Nate maybe struggled with that is the person wasn't
Oh,
following along.
before we move on, real quick. So, this individual told me that COVID was developed at Area 51 by the government to
Checks
cause
out.
infertility, and also has a built-in kill switch, and it's being used to reduce the population of poor people. And so my immediate, Socratic method thing, I'm like, okay, well, if it's got a built-in kill switch, why would they then go to the extra step with the infertility thing? Doesn't one do the other? That doesn't make any sense at all. He's like, oh, it's just I get all this stuff. I get it all from my paramedic friend. He knows all about this kind of
I
stuff.
know.
I'm like, okay, but a paramedic isn't a doctor, right? Like, he's not an
No.
epidemiologist. He's not a virologist. He just happens to work in the same field, right? Like, we work in trades. We do drywall and insulation and fireproofing. But if you asked me to plumb your house, I would be completely lost. It's a completely different thing within the same industry. And I'm trying to get him for that light to go on. And it's just didn't want to get on board.
And
So
there are plenty of dishonest people within the industry. Like, I mean, even taking paramedics, like there are plenty of them that are amazing and that follow the guidelines and they understand, they read up on the issues, and they, like, a lot of them are great resources, and then others that, are dishonest in the way they approach things. And like you see that with doctors too. You see it with everybody. I mean, uh it no one is immune to bad reasoning.
Sure.
And so I
I see what you
think
did
it's
there.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
pun.
Well, so what is the best way for us to keep up with what's going on in this or really any like major widespread health crisis while
Yeah.
also sorting through all of that misinformation? I mean, what can you say about how the average Joe can read the news without having to spend all day reading the goddamn news?
Yeah. So places like the CDC are constantly updating their guidelines. The WHO is also updating their guidelines as new information comes out. Even some smaller resources like the one that I used primarily to look into this. This is more for people with a medical background. I mean, it's a free resource, so everyone's welcome to read it. But it's Stat Pearls. It's primarily like for med students and residents. But you can find any number of medical topics there. It's up to date standards of care and resources. Um, so, I mean, there are places to go to make sure that you're finding credible journals. Like if you follow JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, generally has some good stuff. Again, maybe a bit more on the advanced level, but usually you can find some stuff there. Not all of their stuff is free, but some of it is. Um, you can sometimes find, even on YouTube, you can sometimes find seminars or lectures from physicians in a certain area of study. But again, be careful that you're getting a quality resource. Make sure that, like, if they're affiliated with a medical board or if they're affiliated with a university, they're more likely going to have better information. But I know it's difficult to find free resources out there without being at risk for some more dubious sources.
Hmm.
Yeah, are there any like kind of red flags that you can point to? Anything that we can very quickly dismiss or just acknowledge as evidence of a bad piece of information?
I
I have
mean,
one.
yeah, go for it, Nate.
If it involves the word Infowars, probably not a good
Probably a good sign
resource.
that it's bullshit. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fair.
yeah, just throwing that out
Yeah,
there.
probably don't get your medical advice from Facebook or Twitter or other places on the social medias, because I mean, you can find some decent stuff there, but I wouldn't recommend that being your go-to source. Um, and like we kind of talked about, if you see somebody making a claim, number one, if they're making a claim that goes against kind of what the CDC or the WHO has said, it's probably not a good source. But also, if they're making a claim and then jumping straight to a conclusion without providing evidence or without providing some rationale to back it up, probably not a safe thing to look at. And it might be difficult to sift through some of those. I know some people do a really good job at pretending like they know information. But others are very obvious that they don't. Like if someone says the monkeypox vaccine is going to turn you into a robot, you could probably not go with them as a legitimate source. So
Yeah, I didn't get any citations on the Area 51 kill switch
Yeah.
theory. So just saying. It fell apart pretty quick. What was that website that you mentioned? Stat Pearls?
Stat Pearls, yeah, it's all one word. S is capitalized, P is capitalized, and Pearls. So it's just they have a lot of study resources for physicians and med students. So, but it's free. All their stuff is free, which is why I use it.
Yeah.
So if you want anything that I've talked about, kind of the notes on where I got that, that's where you can find it.
Okay. Well, yeah, and we'll have a link to that as well as some of the other things that we've been talking about in the show notes for this episode. Are there any other resources that you want to point people towards? Any recommendations for how to better understand these subjects?
The ones that I mentioned are kind of the best ones. I mean, there are some apart from this, if you have access to some more journals, something called Up to Date is great, but that's more it's kind of expensive, so I doubt people have access to that.
Sure.
That's pretty much all the sources I got that are more accessible.